program of the Napa
County Historical Society.
We have the privilege and pleasure of
sharing your memories of the past with the rest of us. That past lives on.
In this tour, we learn not only about the history of the families that now occupy these impressive stone buildings, but also about the impressive houses they lived in while alive. And that is when I've been able to find such information in my research. On this final part of the tour today, we will visit another 7 historic family mausoleums.
Hi, my name is Danielle Barreca with the Napa County Historical Society Board of Directors. Thank you for tuning in today. It is because of the support of members like you that we are able to still provide content during this challenging time. Please consider renewing your membership or gifting a membership to a friend or family member. Thank you, and we hope you tune in again.
Here we are at the Goodman Mausoleum. Now the name Goodman has already come up on this tour in the name of James H. Goodman. But this mausoleum was built for his younger brother, George E. Goodman, and his family. Both of the Goodman brothers were born in upstate New York. James headed west first, landing in San Francisco in 1850. George followed, and the brothers partnered in a wholesale grocery business together called the Goodman Brothers. They branched out into Napa from there, George arriving by 1855 and James in 1856. And operated Goodman and Company, which sold boots, shoes, clothing, wallpaper, window shades, oilcloth, powder, lead, shot, and caps. In 1858, they established the first bank in Napa, and although they were partners, it was named the James H. Goodman Bank. Despite being a wealthy banker, James Goodman didn't own a house in Napa. He was a boarder in the house of John and Jeannie Mudgett. And when John Mudgett died, James married Jeannie, and they moved to the Palace Hotel in San Francisco. But George Goodman and his wife, who was born Caroline Jacks, established themselves very well in Napa. They built a fine mansion in 1874 on Brown Street, which was called Grant Avenue then, on the corner of Oak. Later, a small apartment building was constructed in front of the house on Brown Street, and so now that house is listed on Oak Street and has been divided into apartments. When their son, George E. Goodman Jr., married Florence Millard in 1890, they had a large house constructed for the couple close to their home on the southeast corner of Randolph and Oak. The architect was John Marquis of San Francisco. It is the most elaborate surviving Victorian house in the city of Napa, and my personal favorite. It had been divided into apartments by the 1920s. They also donated the land and building for a library to the city, and today the Goodman Library is home to the Napa County Historical Society. The descendants of Caroline and George Goodman live in Contra Costa County, and they made the trip up to attend the ceremony for the reopening of the Goodman Library after earthquake repairs were finished in 2018. Ah! Welcome to the Duffy Mausoleum. Philip S. Duffy was born in County Monaghan, Ireland, and immigrated to the U.S. in 1850. After 7 years in New York and another 7 years in Missouri, he made his way out to Lander County, Nevada, which must have been quite a contrast in landscape from the Emerald Isle. There he established the Iowa Canyon Ranch, where he raised horses, cattle, and sheep. In 1873, he married Kate Maxwell, who was originally from County Meath, Ireland, which adjoins County Monaghan on the border of Northern Ireland. The couple raised 5 children in Lander County, but in 1901 they sold their property and moved to Napa County. Following Kate's sister and her husband, they were following Kate's sister and her husband, who had already moved from Lander County to Napa. They bought a house just north of the city limits at the corner of Main and Central, and soon after bought the former John W. Grigsby Ranch at the end of Big Ranch Road. They renamed the 380-60 property Nevada Ranch and established a dairy on it. The dairy was well known for Duffy's Creamery butter. They had the mausoleum built when their youngest child, Agnes A. Duffy, died from a ruptured appendix in 1912, just after her 21st birthday. Her parents and all 4 of her siblings are entombed in the mausoleum with her. I haven't had any success in finding images or descriptions of their houses, except for one of the J.W. Grigsby Ranch, which presumably they kept the house that was there. But we, in the Historical Society, have photos of the house that their son, Owen Duffy, lived in when he was superintendent of the Napa State Farm on the old Fry Ranch from 1917 to 1954. His family lived in the old vacation home built for San Francisco banker Colonel Fry. This modest abode featured 32 rooms, although that includes closets, 12-foot ceilings, stained glass windows, redwood panels on both the ceilings and the walls. Ah! Welcome to the Mansfield Mausoleum. 10 days shy of his 23rd birthday, Massachusetts native Jera M. Mansfield took a 6-month sea voyage around Cape Horn to San Francisco. He arrived in September of 1848 and engaged in various enterprises, carpentry, trade, butchery, and the dairy business, in places such as San Francisco, Stockton, and Marysville. Around 1855, he came to the Napa Valley to farm, and from that day to the time of his death was considered one of the most successful farmers of the community, says his obituary. In 1859, he married Ellen G. Estabrook. The couple established a residence in the city of Napa in 1865 on the corner of Franklin and 4th Streets, I believe on the southwest corner, about where the Methodist Church Annex building now stands. When Jera died in 1896, he was described as a holder of much valuable real estate and one of the wealthiest citizens of the county. Ellen outlived Jera by 21 years, and her only daughter by 14 years, dying at the house on the corner of Franklin and 4th Streets that she had lived in for over a half-century in 1917. All of the Mansfield's children, their daughter and their 3 sons, are listed inside this mausoleum. But I have yet to find any images or descriptions of that house. Ah! Welcome to the Johnson family mausoleum. Scottish-born James H. Sewing Machine Johnson and his wife Mary, natives of Michigan, settled in Napa by 1886. While he started by selling sewing machines, James also sold pianos, organs, bicycles, and later on cars. Their house was on the southwest corner of Main and Camas Streets. Later they had a garage built on that corner, and they moved north of Lincoln on Main Street. That property is now the site of Berkshire Assisted Living Facility. The main entrance to that facility is on Brown Street, but they have a parking lot in the back with an entrance from Main Street, and that is where the Johnson house was. The garage they built on the corner of Main and Camas Streets is still there, however. In 1935, the building was taken over by the Napa Grocery Company, and until recently it was home to Toynbeeville. Mary and James Johnson only had one child who died of diphtheria at the age of 4 1/2. When old Sewing Machine Johnson died in 1927, he left his wife Mary alone with an estate valued at $130,000, which would be around $2.5 to $3.5 million today. She remarried in 1930 to George H. Page, a widowed headstone setter who worked at the Marble Works in Vallejo, but he would die only 2.5 months after the wedding. This time, the 74-year-old widow did not stay single long. She married Ira Spangler less than 7 months after George Page's death. I find the description of Ira Spangler in the Napa Journal upon the occasion of their wedding somewhat odd. Mr. Spangler is a businessman of wide experience, being a graduate in vocal and instruments from the University of Chicago. He has traveled extensively. Mary separated from Spangler only 9 months later. She accused him of having kept her a virtual prisoner in a room in San Francisco while converting her property into liquid assets and having them conveyed to his own name and that of his daughter. At the same time, she filed a divorce suit. Charles S. Grady, who is described as a secretary of the Napa Chamber of Commerce, filed a petition for guardianship of Mary, asserting that she was incompetent to handle the affairs of her large estate. That suit succeeded. Later that year, Mary died. Her new handwritten will that left the bulk of her estate to her lawyer's wife was challenged by her ex-husband. The suit was complicated by the fact that before it was decided, her ex-husband died, and his daughter from another marriage was forced to carry the suit forward, and it was further complicated when the chief counsel in defense of the will died. But eventually, the will was upheld.
Mew mew.
Manuel P. Moniz was born in Benicia and married Edna M. Rogers of Petaluma. Manuel worked for a short time at Mare Island, but for 42 years the couple made their livelihood from fruit orchards in Solano County. They also built the ice house on Rockville Road, which is still there, just east of Sassoon Valley Road. In 1946 they retired and moved to Napa, building a house and putting in a street that was named after them as they lived at 4 Moniz Boulevard, just above Lakeview Drive. The house they retired to is still there, 2,300 square feet with a Spanish tile roof, stone fireplace, two-car garage, and terrific views over the city of Napa. A real estate website estimates its value at $1.4 million. This mausoleum is the newest one on our tour. The earliest death date of the people listed inside is 1958. That would be for Jack Rogers, the brother of Edna Rogers Moniz and brother-in-law of Manuel Moniz. Known as Mr. Coca-Cola, Jack had been in the grocery business before founding the Rogers Bottling Company in Vallejo and acquiring the local Coca-Cola distributorship. He and his wife, who was born Florinda Siquiera, lived at 5390 St. Helena Highway, in between Napa and Yountville, in a large house that is still there, but is not easy to photograph because it is so far off the highway at the end of a private driveway. His wife worked with him and continued in the business after his death. Being vice president of the Coca-Cola distributorship at the time of her own death in 1964, she is interred in this mausoleum as well, according to her obituary and funeral notice in the Napa Register. Ah! Agostino Rossi and his bride, Paolina Navoni, were married in their native country of Italy. They immigrated to America in 1876, and by 1880, Agostino had found employment as a gardener at the Napa Soda Springs Resort. I assume by hard work and thrift they saved up enough money to buy the ranch they next moved to, but I honestly don't know how they came about their money. All I know for sure is that they wound up owning a ranch on the Silverado Trail. Today that ranch is the home of Baldacci Family Vineyards. They sold the ranch in 1923 and retired to Napa, living in a modest home in East Napa at 1004 Juarez Street. Agostino's obituary mentions that he was the founder of the vegetable garden on First Street. Many people today might remember the family because of their daughter Gussie, whose married name was Minogue. She was the founder and longtime owner of the popular Grapevine Inn restaurant on the west side of California Highway 29, just north of Yountville. She started the restaurant in 1936, and when she became ill in 1958, the restaurant was taken over by her daughter and son-in-law, Florence and Lee Carboni. They ran it for another 28 years before it closed in 1986 after a half-century of serving traditional Italian dinners to the Napa Valley. Today, the restaurant Bricks occupies the site of the old Grapevine Inn. Ah! The Ruthi Mausoleum. Francesca Cerruti, whose maiden name was Pescio, and Joseph Cerruti were Italian natives who operated a ranch in the Antelope Valley, south of US 50, just west of Eureka, Nevada. They moved to Napa around 1901 and lived in two different houses on Seminary Street, just north of the bridge across Napa Creek, both of which were quite modest. They had only one child, Kate. She was about 16 when the family arrived in Napa. She graduated from Napa Business College and married Giovanni, or John, Canepa in 1907. In 1912, only 3 days after her 27th birthday, she died after a long and painful illness. Her obituary doesn't offer any more specifics. It was in response to her death that her parents bought the lot at Tulocay Cemetery and had Jamie Newman construct this mausoleum. But Kate's is not the only tragedy that this mausoleum bears witness to. On the right side, in the interior, can be seen the final resting place of Della and Pietro Pescio. Pietro was Francesca Cerruti's nephew and an employee in the quarries of the Basalt Rock Company. His wife Della had 2 children from a previous marriage, one of whom died in a car accident at the age of 17, shortly before they were married. The second died in a car accident at the age of 21, shortly after they were married, and only 7 months after his own marriage. Those are Albert and Freddie Passini, seen at the top of the right-hand side of the mausoleum. The Pescios lived with his aunt and inherited her house. Having lost the 2 boys, they adopted Della's niece in Italy, but it took many years of work before she was allowed to come and live with them. It required the passage of a bill by the U.S. Congress, authored by Representative Clem Miller. Ah! Wait, where's the cat? Thank you for joining us on our tour. I'd also like to thank my wife Elizabeth, who recorded all of the video for this tour, and my daughter Catgirl for making the whole experience fun.
Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed the programming. Remember, you can social distance while still getting closer to local history.
History is very much alive.